On today's Visual Studio Toolbox, David and I are going to chat about why and how you can use code reviews to improve your code. Hi, welcome to Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Robert Green. Today we're going to be talking about code reviews, but before we do that, I wanted to alert you guys about the Azure Open Source Day. So this is an event on Tuesday, March 7th, so it's coming up. It's still plenty of time to register at 9 o'clock Pacific time. And it's a great opportunity to learn how to build intelligent apps faster and easier with open source using Azure and the latest open source technologies. So you'll see tips on how to build apps. There'll be app building demos. You'll get great tips on how to use open source products like HashiCorp, GitHub, Redis. You'll learn how to build cloud native applications, discover what's new in containers, learn practical techniques for optimizing your open source investments. Great day. You'll hear from Brendan Burns. You'll hear from Donovan Brown. You'll also hear from Stormy Peters of GitHub. And I highly recommend this event. I'll certainly be attending. I'd love to see you guys there. You can learn more about it, aka.ms//Azure Open Source Day. So register, attend, and learn all about the latest in Azure and open source. And with that said, we'll do our show today. I'd like to bring on my guest, Mr. David Giard, my good friend from Chicago. Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. Robert, how are you?
Great to see you. Welcome back on the show.
Thank you.
And we're going to talk about code reviews.
I'd love to talk about code reviews.
What are they? Why are they? Why should I be doing them? And most importantly, how do we do them well? I guess if we're going to do something like this, we should do it well.
Might as well, just like this show right here. What's the point unless it's excellent?
Exactly.
Yeah, code reviews. I mean, I've been doing code reviews a long time, but I still run into people that are not doing them. So can I just start with just sort of the process, what a code review is and
Absolutely.
the steps involved?
Yep.
Here's the elevator pitch. A code review involves essentially two parties, a code author and a code reviewer. Code author writes some code. They make sure they think it's good enough. And the idea behind a code review is we're not going to push code directly into our production branch. We'll have some sort of vetting process that says, before we let this code become really official and merge it with our production branch, there's some gatekeeper, and that's the code reviewer. The code reviewer then will look at that code. And usually we package it up using tools like GitHub or Azure DevOps, some application lifecycle management tool, and we create a set of changes, a change list, and a pull request. A pull request is a request. I want to take this code and I want to merge it with the main branch of the code so it can go into production. And the code reviewer then, yeah, go ahead.
So does a code review basically then become a prerequisite for accepting a pull request? Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's exactly it. It's a step in as part of the pull request process. It's that vetting process. I want to, here's my code. I think it's good enough. Code reviewer looks at it, whoa, wait a minute. I'm the gatekeeper here. I'll look at it. I'm going to have a vetting process. And they'll look at it and they'll say either yes, looks good, go ahead and merge it with the main branch, or there are some issues. And if there are issues, that the code reviewer will document those issues and send it back to the author.
That obviously happens with open source software. If you're going to contribute to .NET, for example, and you fork the code and make a change and submit a pull request, it's not like the people that own the software are going to accept your code before looking at it and discussing it with you. So that pretty much already happens, if you will, with open source software. But I'm assuming that even if you're not doing public open source software, that you still want to do something similar.
That's a great point. I think it actually began with the open source community. You know, you're letting strangers contribute to your code base, so you want to vet that. But I would advocate that this is a great thing for enterprise software, for any team that's doing this, that you want to have somebody vetting that code, another set of eyes to look at it, and send it back with a list of issues if there's some problem with it, and let the code author then make changes, address those issues, either justify them, it's not a bug, it's a feature, or make changes to fix those issues and send it back. And they kind of play this ping pong back and forth, you know, until the code reviewer says, you know what, good enough, thumbs up, let's go ahead and approve this pull request, merge it with the main branch, and now you've got some comfort level that this is quality code. We've had two sets of eyes looking at it.
So I think we're all comfortable with being the code author, but tell me more about the code reviewer. Is it a person? Is it somebody I know? Is it a team?
Well, it could be anyone.
It's GPT or whatever that morphs into eventually.
It's our AI overlords. We're going to be taking this over. No, typically it's a person, a human being that'll take a look at it. It could be someone on your team. It could be someone else. It could be another developer. I think that's actually a really good person to do that. And I talked about the process. I kind of want to go through the why we do a code review, because most people think of it as it's there to validate the code. That the purpose of the reviewer is just to make sure the code does what it's supposed to do, which is true. That's an important thing. You don't want if you want to create an application that calculates interest rates properly, you want it to work properly. But it's so much more than that. It not only validates the code internally or externally that does what it does, but make sure that it adheres to certain standards. We want to make sure that it's run efficiently if there are improvements we can make in the code. So having a developer as a reviewer is really helpful because they can make suggestions about, libraries maybe that you weren't using or patterns they're not familiar with. It's great. It's also a really good way to share knowledge. If another set of eyes are looking at this code, then now I've got another person on the team that's familiar with the code. They're familiar with the business rules. They're familiar with the code itself and the patterns that are being used, and the tools that are being used. Because as you know, every developer has a bus assigned to them, a bus or a lottery ticket assigned to them. And every manager says, well, what happens if Robert wins the lottery tomorrow? Or if David gets hit by the bus tomorrow? What's our contingency plan if we lose our developer? Well, having that knowledge spread across the team is good. Code reviews help enforce that. It shares the ownership of that code across the entire team rather than having it, little silos of knowledge that could lead us at any time if we win the lottery or get hit by a bus.
So, because I can imagine, if I write code and I run all my unit tests and all my unit tests pass and the code does what it's supposed to do,
sure,
that I guess at that point I'm likely ready to just check it in and move on.
Ship it. Works on my machine.
Works on my machine and all the tests passed. And then I checked it in and all the tests ran and it still passed. And it passed the integration tests and the code does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, you can automate part of this process, and that's a good idea. You should be writing automated tests and unit tests, integration tests, end-to-end tests. Those are great, but there's a couple of issues with that. One is that if you run those all on your own machine, then that cliche, it works on my machine, is a real problem because there may be, first of all, environmental things that are unique to my machine that don't happen on the server. Maybe I've got a library installed locally that isn't installed on the server. Having someone else pull the code down, test it on their machine would help to vet that. There may be integration issues with other people. There's other people working on the same system at the same time, and maybe something I do has a side effect that affects their code, or something they do is going to affect my code. So these two code bases or these two code changes work fine independently, but when we bring them together, there may be some conflict that we wouldn't anticipate if we're just running automated tests locally.
Okay. Interesting. So the code reviewer is typically a developer working on the same project, a developer working on a different project. What kind of knowledge does the code reviewer need to have of what you're doing in order to be effective?
Yeah, I think that ideally you want someone that has knowledge about the system, the language that you're using. A developer is really nice for that, because then they can see things from the same perspective. They can read the code, they can understand, they know what the business rules are. That's not always possible. Smaller teams, or if you don't have somebody like that available, just having anyone look at the code is helpful. But this is really not beyond, if you've got other developers working on it, you're also having a chance to raise engineering issues. If there are things that haven't been decided, architectural decisions that haven't been made, those can sometimes come up because there's a lot of times there's conflict between the reviewer and the author. They may disagree about what is an issue, what's a bug versus what's a feature, or is this by design or not, or if I suggest an enhancement, is that worth holding up the entire code review based on that? And if they have a shared knowledge and a shared context about this, that helps to derive that conversation.
Okay, and then who mediates conflicts?
Oh, great question. I've written a blog post about this on my blog. It's davidgr.com is my blog. Just a quick promotion here. But there's really a process. One of the things you can do to make code reviews better is to have some resolution for when there is a conflict. The first thing to do is if you run into this stalemate, how do you mitigate that? The first thing to do is to just have the tester and the reviewer and the author talk to each other, because often these things, even if you're not remote, often these things are done through messages in the system, which is a lot of context is lost when you're just sending messages through a change list and things like that. But sometimes just walking over to somebody's desk, pinging them on Teams is a way of resolving that, just making sure you understand each other. If that doesn't work, maybe you need to step back and have an architectural design session, because sometimes conflict results because we haven't architectural decisions weren't made in advance. And maybe this is a good time to make an architectural decision. Go into a room with a whiteboard and decide, this is how we're going to do this. This is how the system is supposed to operate. Another way to do it, of course, is to escalate it to a manager. And these are in order here. You want to talk first and one-to-one, design next, escalate it next. But before you do that, maybe whether you're the author or the reviewer, it might be a good idea just to consider, is this a hill I want to die on? Because as as a software developer yourself, there's a lot of right answers to the same question. Often there's multiple right ways of doing things. And maybe just because I'm right, that doesn't mean you're wrong. Maybe even if I firmly believe that I'm more right than you, that I have a better solution, that doesn't mean that your solution won't work. It's not a bad one. So something to consider is, concede. All right. Yeah, my way works, but so does their way. And let's, it would save a lot of time if sometimes it takes longer just to argue than it does to just make the fix.
Yeah.
Accept the code.
So if I'm assigned a task and I create a branch to work on that, and I estimate that it's going to take some time, X amount of time to write the code, should I also estimate who estimates how much time the code review takes? And then am I done when I've submitted the PR and then it's on the code reviewer to complete the code review before the code checks in? So am I on the hook for the code reviewer taking too long, or is that always on the code reviewer? How does that work?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been on a team where I had influence over how fast the reviewer worked. Okay. However, I can say that one of the things that you can do to make this review process go better is to start faster. In other words, if I'm a reviewer, then beginning that review process as soon after I get the code as possible really helps things, because if there is an issue, I can communicate that issue back to the author. They can fix it while it's still fresh in their mind. They haven't written a lot of extra code. The longer you wait for this, then the more the more code you have to merge, more conflicts potentially you might have to merge. So the faster you do that, the better off you'll be. And the same thing on the code author side. If you get a list of issues back from a code review, starting to work on that right away helps a lot, because then you can get you can get these fixes back to the reviewer. They can review them while it's still fresh in their mind. That whole process takes a lot less time, and there's less chance of conflicts within the code. So I think this is a good practice. Now, given saying that, of course, it's not always possible. We have other issues. Where if I'm a developer, I'm likely working on my own issues. But keeping that in mind, that should be a priority, will help everything.
So, how do you avoid the conflict of, I've written my code, I've submitted it. It's your turn to code review, but you're in the middle of doing the code you were supposed to do, so you can't get to the code review. So now maybe I can go review some code while I'm waiting for you to come back. You come back, but I'm in the middle of reviewing somebody else's code. How do you sync all that? Because how do you not turn this all into just one giant set of cascading roadblocks?
I think there's no perfect answer to that. It depends upon the situation. I think just really the thing to keep in mind is that you think of this code review process as a priority. It is really part of deploying and writing software, and don't let it slip down as if it's some sort of peripheral thing. It really is an important part of writing software. And the whole idea is that there are issues. You want to fail fast, right? We've been talking about this for Agile for the last 20 years.
Right.
One of the big advantages of Agile is that if there's problems, we can address them sooner because we're recognizing them sooner. And this is just a part of that. Yeah. The other thing is that there's a long-term benefit of these whole review process is because there's this thing called the shift left principle. And the shift left principle says that the sooner if you map time from left to right, then the further left, the sooner after you discover a problem, the cheaper it is to fix that problem. Right. So, if I'm writing code and I notice a bug in my own code, then I can backspace and fix it right away. That costs pennies, literally pennies to fix that. If the reviewer catches it and sends it back to me, then that might cost dollars. But if it goes out into production and a customer catches my bug, that could be thousands, could potentially be millions of dollars. I may lose sales. I may lose reputation because of that. So that it can go up exponentially. And this is a whole process to shift left, to catch problems sooner when they're much, much cheaper to fix.
Cool. What other tips and tricks for either what's in a code review or how to convince your team to start doing them? Let's say you've decided, yes, we should start doing this. Is it hard to convince the rest of the team? You got to get approval of not only the team, but up to management. Does that tend to be difficult?
It seems, the things I talked about, the benefits, you would think everybody would be doing this, but that's just not true.
You would think everybody would be running a full set of unit tests.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason that people aren't doing code reviews, same thing, they're not writing automated tests, is because they take time, they take effort, they take stamina, and nobody has an unlimited amount of that. And a lot of people or a lot of organizations think, that's peripheral. We should be writing features. We should be writing new code, as if this weren't important. And this is really important. Writing quality code is at least as important as writing new code.
Yes.
So that's a challenge. Sometimes communication is a big challenge. This is asynchronous communication, usually done through typing messages into a system like GitHub or Azure DevOps. People don't always communicate well, and when they're not face-to-face, that's a problem. Different opinions, we may both think we're right about the way to do something. We may both be right, but we have different opinions. We come out from different contexts. And then also there's this whole concept in our education system where, as we're growing up, at least in America, we tend to value individual accomplishments over collaboration. And code reviews really should be about collaboration because you're both working towards the same goal. And that's something to always keep in mind. I think there's a myth in some organizations that the code reviewer and the code author are somehow at odds with each other, that they're enemies. Totally false. They're both working towards the same goal. And when I submit code and a reviewer catches a problem in that code, I'm grateful for that. I want, they just saved me the embarrassment of having that go out to somebody else, or maybe they've taught me something new that I didn't realize before. So these are the benefits that you can come up with. I think really to answer your question, the idea behind getting organizations to do it is to talk about the benefits. Recognize that there are challenges, sure, but talk about the benefits of it. This failing fast, cheaper. It's much cheaper to fix errors sooner rather than later. That's what That's a huge benefit of it. The idea of sharing knowledge among the team, so that we've got now the code has the code base doesn't just have one owner. We don't have these silos of knowledge. That's a huge benefit. The idea of improving developers because they're getting feedback from someone else. Maybe the reviewer says, "Hey, have you thought about using this pattern? I never heard of that pattern. I'm a little bit smarter now for having gone through this." And again, it's a challenge. I don't like pointing out errors in people. I was taught that was rude, but that's kind of the the job of the reviewer. You're pointing out errors in order to help them and use them to accept that.
Is the best way to provide the feedback inside the code?
The next point. Oh, great point. So if you're so as a code reviewer, if you're there are systems like GitHub and Azure DevOps that have a process for doing that. So as you create a change set and a pull request, there's a form in there you can say, okay, there's a problem with this module right here. You can put a description within that system, within that ALM system. And that's great. One really nice thing for the code author to do when they get that is to answer the questions with the code by making your code more readable. I think that's really helps the code reviewer, because sometimes the issue isn't really there's not a problem with the code. Maybe the reviewer doesn't understand your code, and maybe that's a problem. Maybe your code isn't readable enough. So even if you realize, oh, the code reviewer made a mistake, this actually does do what it's supposed to do, that could be a code smell, could be a red flag that your code could be improved in its readability.
Okay, cool. So if people want to get started on this, we'll have the link to your blog post. I think you make a very good case for why and how you should do this. Are there other resources?
Yeah, I have. Oh my gosh! So my blog post was very little of it was original thought from me. I aggregated a bunch of really smart people's writings on it, and I think at the bottom of it I have a list of those links on here.
Okay.
I don't have it here. I actually have it on my slide deck because I sometimes give a presentation on this. I will send you some links from other people whose ideas I learned from. And
we'll put those. Send me a list. We'll put them in the show notes so people can go learn more about this. And excellent. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on and telling us about this and sharing your thoughts on this. It's obviously an important thing. It's obviously something people should do.
I agree.
I think, again, you made some good arguments for why this should become part of how you do software development. So thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Robert, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will see you next time on Visual Studio Toolbox.